Hi there, Corey from SaaS Pegasus here. We are back with another screencast, and today I want to talk about billing. And specifically, the thing I want to talk about is usage limits. So I've been working some more on my translation product, and I was thinking about how I wanted to price this thing, and I looked at many of the other apps in this kind of space, and it seems like they all price on sort of usage. So things like how many words you're allowed to host on their site, and for the ones that have AI, like how many AI sort of translations they're willing to generate for you. So I figured, why not just copy what they're doing? And so I'm thinking of pricing my app in kind of like a similar way. And in this screencast, I'm basically just going to walk through sort of the easiest way to do this, to add these usage limits to your app. This is a question that I get asked a lot from people who are doing their own Pegasus projects, especially with AI and LLMs. They want to sort of do things like you get a certain number of credits every month. And so this screencast will provide the basics for what you need to put in place in order to make that happen. Okay, so I was just playing with this, and I will show you how this works right now. So you can see in this project, I have uploaded an English file with just some 5 translations and 46 words. I have added a word count field here, and I've added this little display that says your project is using 46 total words and you've translated 0 words with AI. So now if I click the Generate Translations button, and remember, this free plan that we're on only includes 100 words. So I'm going to click this, and this will run through my AI translations, and it'll go through the translations one at a time. And then eventually it hits this sort of limit, and it'll say, uh-oh, word limit was reached. You've used 104 words out of your 100. Please go upgrade your plan. So now if we refresh the page, we'll see our project is using 104 words. And if we try and do this again, we'll immediately get this error again, kind of sending us to the paywall. So I have implemented this for word count, which is kind of like the total hosted words. I have not implemented it for AI translation count. So I thought it would be worth walking through that process, having gone through it once, and I will show you all the pieces needed to make that work. Okay. So starting off, so whenever we're going to add a usage limit to something, we're going to need to track the usage of that thing. And a naive approach might be to set a counter at the beginning of the month and then sort of like subtract from that counter every time that you use up your credits, and then sort of like reset the counter at the end of the month. I do not recommend that approach. It's very easy for you to lose track of stuff, and if the customer wants to know, well, hey, how did I spend these 20 credits, and all you're doing is subtracting from a number, you'll have no way to show them that. So instead of using a counting-based approach, what I do normally is a record-based approach. And so you can see this, you have translated 58 words with AI. So let's go ahead and bump up those limits. So I just defined those limits in this feature gating file. And so let's bump up the word limit to 200 so we can now do some more translations. And so I will run that again. That didn't work because I didn't restart Celery. So let's try that again. So now it's going to finish those translations. It did 135 total words and 89 translations. So the way that works is a model. And the model that I have added is this translation operation model. And so what you can see is every time we're running one of these operations, it has a reference to the date it was run, the team it was run in, the user who ran it, the number of words that were used in that, the language information, which maybe is useful. And basically the idea is this is just an ongoing log of every AI operation that's happening in our system. And so once you've added that model, and I can just go ahead and show you the code real quick, but it's what you would expect. It's just kind of all those fields that we just looked at. You just have to make sure that you update or modify this model every time you are working with whatever you want to track. And so in this case, there's only one place where I'm doing these LLM translations. And so in this code, what I essentially did is I keep a counter of how many words I've translated. Every time I run it through the translation engine, I add to that counter. That's kind of down here. And then at the end, I create this translation operation with the total amount of words and all the other information there. So now every time I call my translation function, it will, as a side effect, also create one of these translation operation models. I'm doing this in a finally block because, as I'll show you in a little bit, one of the things that can happen here is you could reach one of your limits and raise an exception. Obviously, other things can fail too, but this is kind of a known failure case. But when an exception gets raised in the middle of this function, we still want to record that we did do this work of generating these translations. So that's why it's in a finally block there. So now that we've got this model, we can count it, which you can see is already happening here. And if I want to now add a limit, so just to kind of prove that this doesn't work, let's add a new language to our project. And I haven't built a UI for that yet, but we can do that in the admin. And this is in this project, I think. So let's add French. We will save that. And so now we'll see we have no French translations. The limit is supposed to be 100. But if we click Generate Translations, it will happily process all of our French translations, and it will go over the 100 limit to whatever we want it to do. So let's look at how we can implement the same kind of message limit, message tracking with this second model. So the first thing I kind of want to add is a function that will be able to tell me what the limit should be for a given team. And the way that's going to work is just like this get word limit. It's going to first check if the team has an active subscription. If it does, it'll return the free version. If not, it will go ask the team, or the subscription rather, what the limit should be. So I'm basically just going to copy these two functions. And instead of using word limit, I'll say translation limit. And is over translation limit. We want to return the free translation limit. And now what we're going to do is we are going to go to our product metadata. And so the product metadata in Pegasus is basically like where you can keep metadata about your products, and products are typically your subscription plans. And so in this case, we're going to add a translation limit. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow us to attach a particular value, like a number of allowed translations, to all of our plans in Stripe. And so now that we've added that field, we can go down to where our plans are described. And so this is our plan config. And we'll just add our translation limit there and our translation limit there. And now, in this function, we can reference that translation limit value. And so now if we're on a free plan, we'll get back for our translation limit the free value. If we are actually on a paid plan, then we'll get back that paid value. And that's how you can tie the numbers of allowed stuff to a given plan. So if we decided, actually we want to make the starter plan have 20,000 words, then we can just go into our product's metadata and we can change this to 20,000, and that will update that value, and everything else should just work. Okay, So that's kind of how that works. Of course, this is over a translation limit function. We also, I mean, we're not actually even using this function, so maybe I'm not going to worry about it yet. And I'll show you why we don't need that. So yeah, so now we have the ability to get the translation limit for a team, and we also already have a function, and just want to find that. We already have a function, get translation words used, which will tell us how many are being used. And so now we basically just want to, in our LLM translation function, do something quite similar to what we're doing here, except instead of checking the word count against the word limit, we're going to check the translation count against the translation limit. So let's add those variables. Did I spell that right? No. What do we call it? Get translation words used. Yeah, okay. And then, sorry, this is team translation counts. And then we want team translation limit. Okay. So now that we have those two values, while we are iterating through our texts, deciding what to translate, we can essentially copy this logic, except instead of using the word count, we'll use the translation counts against the translation limit. And we'll raise a translation limit. I mean, let's just also raise a word limit reached error. Let's see. Team translation limit. Team translation counts. The error message isn't going to be perfect, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. Okay, so now we have added this check to our task, and I think that might be all that we need to do. So if we restart Celery now, let's see. So now, hopefully, if we go to the dashboard and try and do some more translations, we will hit a bug. Get translation limit missing. Yes, true. Yeah, so I knew the error message was going to be a little funny. But it is using that 139 words on the translation thing. So for example, if we now, it's annoying that I have to restart Celery every time, but let's kill that. So now if we decide we actually want our free plan to have 200 translations as well, then we can go ahead and do that, and it should now be happy. Yeah, so, I mean, one thing that I have not done yet, and I suppose we could do it, since that was pretty quick. So it's actually not, the word counts for this project are totals, and that's something that's going to be sort of like a static variable. The translation counts, I'm thinking, are monthly, and so it's not actually it's not actually every translation that exists that we want to track. It's only every translation in the billing period. So yeah, should we go ahead and try to tackle that? I think maybe, why not? So, right. So now this get translation limit for the team, I mean, so the limit is still the same, actually. What is different is the count, and the count probably now needs like a billing period. Yeah, I think the count needs a billing period, and I'm just trying to think about whether we want that billing period to be passed in or whether we kind of want to just grab it from the team here. It's always going to be kind of as of today. So I think we can always just kind of assume that the billing period will be as of today and not worry about it too much. So the first thing we will do is, so we need to check if the team has a subscription. If the team has a subscription, we'll use the subscription billing period. If the team does not have a subscription, then we will just use the calendar month, essentially. So probably what we want is we want a sort of billing period equals billing period, and actually this is probably start date, end date, get billing period for the team. Okay, well, that little exercise ended up sending me down quite a long road. Turns out that working with dates and across months and all these other things is actually quite a mission. So I finally wrote this get monthly billing period function, and then I used this date util relative delta library to essentially, with an anchor date, kind of figure out the nearest monthly billing date that's in the past and handle year borders and month borders and all sorts of stuff. So I wrote some tests for this. The tests are passing. I will probably add this to Pegasus itself so that future people don't have to worry about this code. I was surprised that there wasn't just a very simple sort of thing that works out of the box. But this function now exists, which means we can finally go back. Well, not finally, it hasn't been a lot of time for you, but I can finally go back. And so in addition to filtering by team here, we're also going to add some filters which say created at is greater than the start date and less than the end date. I mean, that other condition should always be true as long as end date is in the future, but we will put it in there anyway. And so now created at. And so now if we go back here, everything we have is still within that window. So let's kind of hack it and say, we'll just take, oh, those aren't modifiable fields. Nah. Well, it's annoying that we can't demo this. Why don't we just hack and say start date equals start date minus a relative delta. So this will just kind of push everything back a month. It's just for the purposes of demo. And then now if we refresh, I'm expecting to see 0 translations with AI. So now when we are doing our logic, it will automatically sort of figure out our billing window and make sure that the usage that we are checking is the usage that occurs in that window. We don't actually have to run anything on a schedule to reset that because it's all kind of being handled in the database with these transaction logs. So that's a nice benefit of this approach. All right, so now we have our sort of usage caps. We've integrated them into our app. They are working with our subscriptions. And we are getting pretty close. I think this was kind of the last piece I wanted to have in place. I will probably also build a landing page. But yeah, I am expecting that this will be sort of like a fully functional MVP. Very focus on the M, emphasis on the M for minimal. But yeah, one step at a time. And that is feature gating with usage limits in Django, Pegasus, Stripe subscriptions. Thanks for stopping by.